Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sibling Trap podcast, or welcome if it's your first time here, because that's a possibility as well. I know that you might not have missed us, but we missed you. It's been 2 weeks and it feels weird, but it also feels like we've had some time to prepare a little bit and like we're still winging it, but at least it's intentionally winging it. I don't know. Barry, what about you? What do you feel?
I feel great about it. I feel great
Good.
today. It's just we have such busy schedules, and we have like an entire list of content. The issue
Yeah.
is just finding relevance, I think, is our thing.
Hmm.
And winging it has always been our thing. We're both, we're gifted with the what is it called? The jaw of the jab or whatever, where we can talk. I forgot that saying, but yeah,
We're
that's who
the
we are. We're
the
very
wing
free
duo.
flowing wing
Hmm.
duo.
Wing duo.
I
So,
like
what's
that.
on your mind
Ring.
today?
Yeah, so I saw this thing on TikTok. It's a Theo Vaughn thing. I don't know if anybody out there is familiar with Theo Vaughn, but he's fantastic when it comes to like mindset coaching, and uh, um, he's very popular on podcasts. He's just a great speaker. Honestly, I love his point of view on everything. I do follow him a lot on socials. But I saw this thing where it asks the question, is it easier for people to leave than stay in relationships? And I know that we in the past have kind of touched base on this a little bit about talking about the difficulties at the end of a relationship or a marriage, going into like a breakup or a divorce, and the things that kind of create that, I guess, problem, or the things that create those problems. So my
Hmm.
point of view, I think that a lot of people think it's easier just to break up and or to get a divorce. And I mean, divorce is a lot larger than a breakup. There's money, there's, assets, property, vehicles, kids, all kinds of different
Paperwork.
things. Yeah, paperwork, lawyers, courts, like there is so much that goes into a divorce. So in reality, I don't think that divorce is as easy as a breakup, and
No.
it may still be easier than actually staying together, however.
Hmm.
So I just think that a lot of people do find it easier to break up. I mean, you don't have to see that person ever again. You go no contact with them. You don't have to worry about that person anymore. You don't have to worry about their kids. You don't have to worry about the image being with them creates. You don't have to worry about the issues that cause the breakup. You don't have to worry about, going back and trying to work through those issues. And really, honestly, it sounds easier. It really does. But I personally think that staying together is easier. Now, everybody's going to jump on me and say, oh, I don't think that's the case. But honestly, I think it's easier just because you're familiar with the person, you know that person in and out. I mean, depending on the depth of the relationship, obviously. But I think that people just have, like, they have their egos. And that's what causes them a lot of time to just call it off and to move on. And me personally, I think moving on is harder than just staying in the relationship and working through those issues. And yes, I am guilty of calling it quits and saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm moving out, or whatever the case was. That honestly put a lot more trauma into my life than just staying and talking it out with that person. And being an adult, I think, is the big part, and realizing that you have mistakes. Everybody has mistakes, especially in a relationship. It's a two-way street. It's not one-sided. It's not, oh, that person. And I mean, obviously the situation dictates that. I mean, if somebody cheats on you and you've been, trying your best to provide a great relationship and a home for that person, and they cheat on you, then yeah, obviously breaking up would probably be easier
Yeah.
than dealing with that, than trying to see through infidelity. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about an even keel. You're faithful to each other. You just don't see things eye to eye. I think you can
So
work through that.
I think, okay, so for like as far as dating is concerned, I think that there's two reasons why I just thought of like why people would leave rather than stay. And number one, it's because they're chasing that high of the honeymoon phase. It's all new, it's all exciting, and it's still fun. It's like rose tinted, so to speak. And in that same vein, it's like once you hit like a 3-4 month mark of being together, like you start to kind of see all the layers and all the things that the other person might need to work on more, right? So it's like the avoidance of looking at your own red flags and your own trauma as well. So it's like you keep jumping from place to place, like you never really have to face it because it's uncomfortable. So in that aspect, I really do feel like it's easier to just leave.
Right. You bring up a great point. I mean, looking inward and seeing the faults that you have and being adult enough
Yeah.
to want to change those things. That's a big thing. I mean, you bring up a great point. Most people would rather move on. I mean, grass is greener, right, on the other
Yeah.
side, but rather than, actually sitting down and taking a deep look at themselves and doing that spiritual healing and trying to fix the things wrong about themselves. And sometimes it takes breaking up with somebody to cause that to happen for people. I'm one of them. I thought I had it all figured out, went through a breakup, realized that I don't, realized that there's a lot about me that I do need to fix. And I took that time, 9 months straight, where I just focused on myself. I'm financially stable. I live in a great home. I have a great job, and it got even better, by my hard work, nobody else's. And it took that to open my eyes, I think. And that's another thing too, is that, it's easier for people to leave because they don't want to admit their faults. They just know they can't change themselves, or they don't want to change themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that that might eliminate that whole chance of it working out, is because they're just too hard-headed or stubborn to see their own faults,
Mhm.
personally.
And like people are afraid of conflict. I mean, I know that I'm still getting comfortable with it. So it's like calling someone else out on what they need to work on too, and recovering people pleasers. We're like, that's really uncomfortable. So not even facing your own stuff, but then like having those hard conversations with someone else that you do see a future with, that takes a lot of courage and also faith in like standing your own ground and faith in what you have, like in the foundation that you have together, that I think a lot of people are lacking, to be quite honest with you.
Absolutely. And I mean, from the other side of things, like trauma makes you tolerate a lot of shit that you
Hmm.
don't deserve, because you don't want to lose that person. And I've been there, I've done that. I've held on to somebody so tightly because I was just so afraid of
Yeah.
what it would be like, what life would be like without that person, instead of seeing that as like a gift. Like, hey, it didn't work out with this person, the door's closing because other doors are going to open up for you. And healing makes you realize some people don't deserve to be in your life anymore and don't deserve your love. And no matter how much you love that person, they may not even be deserving of you. And that's
Hmm.
like a really good point that I think personally I've had to deal with. And through that trauma and through the healing of that trauma, I saw the truth. The truth was that person was a piece of shit and didn't belong in my life anyway, because I was willing to make the changes in my life and become better and become that healed version of myself. And we've talked about that so many different episodes, talking about being the healed version of who you are and who you should be. So,
Yeah. And
um, uh, oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, like, also, I mean, this comes in different forms of relationship, and I know that you'll get where I'm coming from in this, but when someone chooses to leave you, leave your life, a lot of times it's not even your fault.
Right.
And that's really hard to let go of over time.
Yeah. I mean, and that kind of makes sense. Um, I mean, a good sign of your healing is that you can see through that dysfunctional behavior. And that might be the cause of why that person wants to leave. Like maybe they've got a squad of dudes in their inbox, waiting for them to be single. And that's all they want to do is be single so they can explore their options. And the whole time you're thinking, oh, it's something I did or something that I'm not doing. And I
Hmm.
think that that can be a big part of it too. But you have to know that in that instance, it's not up to you to fix. It's not up to you to solve that problem or even honestly take part in it. And once you figure that out, it's better for you to leave, I think, in that case. But I mean, that's obviously situational dependent, and that has to deal with a little bit of infidelity. I mean, a lot of people say that showing interest in other people when you're with somebody isn't cheating, but it is in my book,
Yeah,
honestly.
it's
Um,
true.
if you're showing attention to other people when you're supposed to be dedicated to somebody, that's cheating. Whatever. I don't care
Hmm.
what you think. I'm kidding.
No, I mean, it's
And,
good though. It's good to get perspective. And I think like looking back, I have little ears around, so I have to try to speak in code. So if you pick up on it, let me know. When your marriage comes to an end, it's really interesting to see how, like, especially for mine, like I never had eyes for anyone else. I never, looked outside of the relationship for attention in that way, other than like romance novels, but let's be real. Um, so while we can like marinate of like, well, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, I did this wrong, it's like, no, like, you know what, I gave it my all. And if someone chooses to leave, like, that's their journey. And that's the choice that they've made for themselves. And how it plays out for them is not, you don't have any control in the situation. And for someone
yeah,
who, especially me, like, I want to be able to have a hand in how things map out. I'm very happy that they are mapping out the way that they have, because I did have, 15 months to really work on myself and to really think about how I wasn't showing up in the way that I wanted to, and how I really didn't feel safe within the relationship to have hard
right.
conversations or to heal, because it just wasn't healthy. There was no healthy foundation. So now being on another level in a different relationship, it's really beautifully full circle. And I see a lot that I didn't see them.
Wow. Now, honestly, that's the kind of self-awareness I think everybody should strive for. Because if you're self-aware enough to know that the home that you're in isn't safe, it's not a comfortable environment for you to be vulnerable in, and knowing that, taking yourself out of that equation definitely is a lot easier than staying and trying to rebuild that foundation. Because I mean, you built on it already. You created a home, you created a relationship, a family, and for you to tear all that down just to rebuild again is tough. It is very tough. So in that case, yeah, leaving is obviously going to be smarter because it's not going to get any better. I think there's a
Mhm.
point in a relationship when you realize that so much has happened. There's just, is it recoverable? Is really the question that you should be asking yourself. And if anything points towards yes, then try it. But if it's like you look at it and you're just, oh, what can I do? You can't
Yeah.
go in other directions. If you've tried to mend that and you've tried to rebuild already, then obviously you gave it your best shot or whatever. So
Hmm.
I'm thinking about like relationships in the past. I know for a fact, Katie, that I gave it my best effort. I
Hmm.
tried. I tried to change. I tried to do things better. I tried to do things that that person didn't like tried to stop doing those things. I tried to basically change who I was to make that person happy. And I realized that that person is just unhappy.
Yeah.
Nothing I'm doing is going to help create happiness. Nothing I'm doing is going to assuage any issues in that person's mind. They're just unhappy. And
Hmm.
sometimes you have to let that person go so they can realize that they're unhappy and they can work on themselves and better themselves. And I know that it's hard, and throwing in the towel does take effort because you're giving up everything that you're used to. You're giving up a life that you spent years or months to create. And for you to just be like, oh, I'm done with this, it does take effort. And I'm not trying to downplay that any bit whatsoever. It's just interesting because you really have to look at everything dispassionately. You have to judge the situation and take your own biased opinion out and think, what what could happen if we did stick around? Could it be amazing? Could it be everything that we were hoping it would be when we first started off in the honeymoon phase and all that? And sometimes it's not going to get any better. Sometimes that's just it, you know, you used it
Hmm.
all up. So,
I think it's uncomfortable, especially if there's children involved, because it's like if someone makes a decision to not stay, right?
right,
You have to, in a way, separate you from their reality, right? And it's like they are in this, this whole journey of healing and self-discovery. And it's like, while you can see the other person in pain and see them like struggling to find their feet again, you can't be invested in it. And it's like it can't just be a clean cut. It gets so messy when there's kids involved. And it's like,
yeah,
how do you navigate the fact that you don't work together and you aren't a good fit, but at the same time respecting your own journey, if that makes sense? Like not taking theirs on.
right. And that goes back to the whole, like, if it's not you and if it's not something that you can control, then why even be a part of it? You know, I think that, in that case, they'll say, I would rather leave than change. And if
Mm-hmm.
that's the case, then, that's the easier option. And like you said, it's super uncomfortable to identify these issues in your own life and for you to be adult enough or just self-aware enough to know that you should change. And a lot of times people just look over that. They just don't think that there's anything wrong with them. They think, oh, I'm perfect. I'm just not with the right person who gets my perfection. And I've never ever thought that personally, just because like I'm not trying to toot my own horn and say that I'm super humble, but I mean, even now, yeah, I have a lot of great things going for me and I have a lot to be thankful for, but there's still shit in my life that I need to fix. There's still stuff that I'm dealing with on a daily basis that I have to work through. And if you're not only self-aware enough, but adult enough to realize that your partner is trying to work towards being a better person, and why would you throw in the towel and give up on them? I personally would be supportive if like my significant other said, "Hey, I'm bad at communicating. I'm going to work on that because I know that that's a big issue in our relationship." Why would I say, "Oh, well, it is a big issue, but I was already planning on leaving, so I'm just going to go." You
Yeah.
would want to stay and support them because that might lead to a stronger foundation or a better relationship.
Okay, you bring up a good point though, because I feel like a lot of times, at least for me in my journey, I am inclined to show the other person kindness and consideration in a twisted way of like proving that I am a decent person and it's almost like a worthiness thing. Not that I like want them back or anything like that. It's just like, no, like I am a decent person, whether you believe that or not. So I feel like even after the math, like I'm going to continuously take the opportunities to show that like I'm not who you say I am or you think I am, which is like I never thought about it until now. I'm like, maybe that's why I'm like still so kind when other people are like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you being so decent? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just who you are. You can't
Yeah.
really change your genetic code. If you're wired a certain way to feel a certain way in those situations, it would be out of character for you to do something different or be mean or be hateful. And that's
Right.
something that I've dealt with in the past. And I look at that like I hate saying that I self-sabotage that relationship, but I did because there were days when I knew if I just laid low and did what I normally do and people please, that it would probably be easier. It probably wouldn't cause problems. And the hard wiring in me said, don't do that. Just let it go, move on. But then the other side of me was like, no,
Ruffle the feathers.
let's burn this shit down. And it happens. And, I
Yeah.
don't regret it because it opened my eyes to a lot of things. Especially in that specific breakup or in that relationship. Whereas, like, if I had laid low, I probably wouldn't have seen that or I wouldn't have heard that. Like,
Hmm.
I hate being confrontational. You
Yep.
know that about me. but I put myself in those confrontation just because like I needed answers. And the person I was trying to get answers from was shutting me down and being cold and distant. And that is something that's part of me too. Like when somebody's cold and distant to me, it makes me want to be more engaging because I'm
Yeah.
like, I want answers. I want to talk about this now. And that's something that I've had to work on. And in the healed
Hmm.
version of myself, I mean, we were talking about my most recent situationship, whatever, where it was like, I should be trying to confront this person and figure out why this happened. But I didn't. I went the other direction and I just said, hey, this happened. Cool. I'm just not going to entertain that. I'm not going to bring that into my life because I've worked so desperately hard to keep those kinds of things out of my life and to
Yeah.
keep that stress off of my plate. And I don't think that I want to go backwards. Like I told you, I don't want to go
Hmm.
backwards to the unhealed version of me that stood for that kind of shit and put up with trauma instead of standing my ground and being firm about who I am as a person and what I'm willing to accept in my life and in my relationships. So,
I love that for you. I know it's uncomfortable, but
yay
it's
for the healed.
you know when it's the right move, Wow, there's a lot of you
Right.
knows, but you know, right? Um, no, I think that
You do.
you had touched on something a minute ago, and we kind of touched about it a little bit on before we hopped on, but like after the 3-4 month mark, we start to see other people or your partners as they are, the good and the bad, right? So
Right.
there was a situation the other day, and we've just hit a 4 month mark in my relationship. And I, in the moment, was like, "Ooh, this is kind of triggering me." Like something had happened, and I was like, "I feel kind of triggered by this." And then I'm like, I don't want to say something in the moment because it was like it wasn't the right moment to say something, and I wanted to kind of like reflect on how to bring it up again. And so like later that day, I did bring it up, and I was like, "I just want to let you know, like when this happened, like I was pretty triggered by it because." X, Y, and Z. And I'm not like looking for an explanation or, an apology even. It's just like I felt for the first time ever in a relationship, like I felt comfortable enough and safe enough to be like, this actually didn't sit well with me. And that might be something that I need to reflect on and like think about like why did that activate me so much? And like how can I maybe shift my energy next time if something like that happens again. It's a special moment when you realize in the moment that you're like, wow, I wasn't afraid to come to this person with something that triggered me. And the other person isn't condescending or blaming you or, not taking ownership of it. It's such a healed moment. And it's like, I want that for everyone. And it's in the hard conversations of the honeymoon phase and not just like chasing fun, essentially, where I feel like you do create those moments of connection and reflection of like, wow, I never saw it that way. Like, how can I maybe tread differently next time? Have you ever had that experience where you felt comfortable like that?
No. I think that's a big problem in my life.
Yeah.
You mentioned something really interesting there where you said you took this second to think back and think, could I be less intense about this? Or maybe it's something that I can do, or maybe I'm just, blowing it out of proportion. But what's incredible about that situation is that not only did you feel comfortable explaining to your significant other that made you uncomfortable or it was just over the top or whatever, but it created a situation where both of you were working together towards a common goal. And that
Yeah,
is huge. That's huge, Katie. I'm so
I
happy
know.
for you. But like not having to take the burden of a situation like that made you triggered on yourself and try to fix it, but you worked together to fix that. And you had a good outcome. And I'm really
Both
trying
sides.
not to cry about it, but
Oh my God,
I'm so
really?
happy. No, I'm seriously like, I'm so happy for you because it creates such a safe foundation for your relationship. And you'll think back on that next time you're triggered by something, or if he's triggered by something you're doing, and you both feel comfortable enough to share that with each other, it's just incredible to me. I
Thank
want
you.
that for me, for sure.
Yeah. I want that for you too. And there was something else there. I love you. He's crying.
I'm sorry. That's
No, why are you
amazing to hear.
apologizing?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm
No,
apologizing. You know
no,
me.
I
But
know.
yeah, that's great. Working together to fix and resolve issues that you both have, that is like picture perfect healed relationship status. And that's something that I, like you said, have you ever experienced that? I haven't. I've never been comfortable enough to say, hey, this is what you're doing and it's really upsetting me, or it's kind of upsetting me. How can we fix that together? Like, I've never felt comfortable enough to share that with somebody and to say that honestly. So
I think that when we withhold those moments that do make us feel triggered and like the feelings around the trigger, it just adds to the trauma and adds to the quiet resentment that grows, that wedge that eventually leads to the demise of the relationship. So it's like you have to start having those conversations early on and then like see how the other person does react, or maybe not in a good way, right? Because then it's like we can't avoid the hard things. It's not anyone's benefit.
no, it's not. Avoiding the hard stuff is only going to set you up for failure in the long
Mhm.
run. And, thinking of the flip side of that coin before we wrap everything up, I can honestly say, Katie, that I've created safe space for my significant others to share things because they have. They've come to me and said, hey, I don't like it when you like other girls' pictures or something like that. Or I don't like it when, you go out drinking with your friends and I'm at work. Like, I've made adjustments in my life. I've changed things like that. And I've worked with that person towards a better goal of that person being more comfortable in the relationship. And that's really what it comes down to is, do you feel comfortable when you're not together or even when you are together? I mean, it doesn't really matter. You should be comfortable both ways. You should be comfortable knowing that when you're at home and your significant other is out with their friends, that they're being loyal and faithful, honest,
Yeah.
and being a good person to you and your relationship. Or even when you're together. I mean, there's plenty of evidence out there of like relationships where, the whole thing where your significant other turns their phone and locks it real quick. And I mean, I've dealt with all that, and I've been in
Yeah.
those situations, and I like my face turned red. I instantly started sweating, and like my intuition started pinging like, you should ask more questions about why they're
Yeah.
doing that. And like it just drives that insecurity. And Jesus
You
Christ,
don't feel
I
safe.
hope to God I never feel insecure like that ever again. And
Mm-mm.
that is kind of like one of the main reasons why I've searched my healed side, is to get rid of all that insecurity that was created from a relationship where it was like that, where it was,
Yeah.
hey, what the fuck are you doing? You're sitting
I
right
don't
next to
trust
me,
you.
but you're like, I don't trust you sitting right next to me. Like
Yeah.
that's a lot, and
Mm.
that's too much. And in that case, obviously leaving might be the better choice.
Yeah.
But that's the thing too, is you got to look at it sometimes as what it is. It could be a gift. If a person is not loyal or not faithful and you just don't know about it, and then a breakup happens and you find out later, you look at it like a gift. Like, yes, it could have been easier to stay, but honestly, it's better that we didn't.
Yeah.
So, and there's always, I mean, not always, but there's going to be those instances, and it hurts. It does, because it creates a lot of trauma that you have to work through on your own. You no longer have the support of that significant other, especially if they're the reason that caused all that trauma. So
Amen. And
sometimes giving up is it.
whether you are the deciding one to stay or leave, or you're on the other end of it, the receiving end, the back, I don't know, the other end would be, but like either way, like take the moment to just be reflective and like, who have I been in this relationship? Am I being the person, have I been being the person that I want to be? Have I been proud of who I've been as a partner, as an individual? and like looking at how you can evolve into the next version of you and the next relationship when it's right, and not rushing into the next honeymoon phase. It's like, give yourself that gift of looking inward and doing the hard work, because otherwise you're just wasting time and hurting people along the way, yourself
That's
included.
it. Yeah, leaving a trail of hurt people behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, that's so narcissistic. It's just, and there are people that are like that, that just can't see the faults in their own life, in their own character. And I mean, those are character flaws, and people have them. And unless you're willing to put in that time and the effort, like you said, it's tough. It is. It's hard to do that. It's hard to sit down and actually look at yourself and know that you need to change. It's tough,
It
but
is.
we've been there.
Yeah. And look at us now.
So
Look at us. Look at us.
look at us.
Look at us.
But yeah, anyway, guys,
Good
thank you all
topic.
for sitting in, listening on the conversation. Great topic. As soon as I saw that video Theo Vaughn put out, I was like, man, I want to talk about this with Katie, because the different insights behind what that entails, like leaving or staying. I know it's very hard. It's one of the hardest decisions that I've made in my life, honestly, is to know when to leave and when to stay, because there's always that doubt. There's always the, well, what if we stay and everything works out and this person really is my soulmate? Or what if I leave and I find my soulmate? Like, what if,
Mm.
another door opens? Like, there's
The what
just
ifs.
so much, yeah, so much room for possibilities in both scenarios. And you really do have to sit down and look at them both, because if you don't, you could be selling yourself short on life. So,
Yeah.
but
Amen.
anyway,
Thanks for listening, guys, or watching if you're on YouTube. Hit the
love
subscribe
you.
button. Love you too.
Absolutely.
See you in two
YouTube is
weeks.
great. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.